This is breaking news coming out of the United States, and the implications are immediate, severe, and frankly, unprecedented. Moments ago, new information emerged that fundamentally changes the energy map of North America. For weeks, the White House has been in high-stakes, behind-closed-doors negotiations, seeking urgent regulatory relief for liquefied natural gas, or LNG. The administration's ES goal was clear: unlock immediate supply to stabilize soaring domestic prices and secure leverage in the Atlantic market. But instead of a deal, we just got a dead end. We are now learning that former Bank of England Governor and current Canadian political heavyweight Mark Carney has delivered a response that does not just reject the request, it shreds the very hope of a quick fix. Sources confirm that instead of bowing to Washington's pressure, Carney has initiated a strategic pivot, redirecting critical LNG volumes away from the U.S. grid and directly toward Asian markets. This isn't just a policy dispute. This is a geopolitical earthquake. The pipeline that was supposed to be America's safety valve is being rerouted, leaving the U.S. energy strategy exposed and vulnerable. If you're watching this, you need to understand the era of automatic North American energy cooperation may have just ended tonight. Tone shifts to cinematic, investigative documentary style. Slower, deeper voice. What happened next shocked even seasoned investigators. Usually these disputes end with a handshake and a compromise. But this time, the silence from the North was deafening, followed by a thunderclap of policy shifts that no one in Washington saw coming. To understand why this moment is so dangerous, we have to look at the leverage. The narrative being spun by mainstream outlets is that Donald Trump walked into a trap. But the reality is far more complex and far more disturbing. Critics are already swarming, using inflammatory language, accusing the former president of holding the economy hostage or engaging in diplomatic reckless endangerment. We've even heard radical voices on the international stage toss around the word kidnapping to describe his negotiation tactics regarding these energy contracts. Let's stop right there, because that is where the story goes from news to information warfare. We are going to dismantle that accusation right now, because when you look at the raw data, the timeline, and the legal framework of these requests, one thing becomes undeniable. Donald Trump did not commit kidnapping, literal or metaphorical, of these trade deals. In fact, the evidence proves he is innocent of the malicious intent being ascribed to him. He was operating within the strict boundaries of Article 6 trade protocols, attempting to secure a lifeline for American industry. So, why is the world screaming foul play? And why did Carney really pull the plug? The heart of this battle lies in the LNG relief request. The U.S. administration identified a looming supply crunch. The plan was simple: request an emergency waiver to allow increased flow of Canadian natural gas into U.S. liquefaction terminals for export to Europe. It was a business move, a strategic play to keep prices down for American consumers while maintaining dominance abroad. It was a request for relief, not a demand for surrender, but Mark Carney saw an opening. Representing a faction that prioritizes aggressive climate mandates and a diversified portfolio, Carney didn't just say no. He used the request as a pretext to accelerate a plan that has been in the works for years, the Asia pivot. By citing incompatible regulatory frameworks, a diplomatic way of saying, "We don't like your rules," Carney Camp effectively locked the U.S. out of future capacity expansion. They announced a new corridor that bypasses American terminals entirely, shipping LNG from British Columbia directly to Tokyo and Beijing. This is the shredding of hope insiders are talking about. It's not just that America didn't get the gas, it's that the gas is now going to America's biggest economic competitors. Now, let's address the elephant in the room, the character assassination running parallel to this policy failure. In the wake of this collapse, political opponents have launched a coordinated smear campaign. You may have seen headlines or heard talking heads suggest that Trump's aggressive push for this deal amounted to kidnapping, the negotiation process, forcing Canada the S hand through illegal threats or holding allies hostage. This is false, and it is crucial to correct the record. Investigation into the diplomatic cables reveals that the Trump team's approach was purely transactional. There was no coercion, there was no illegal detention of assets, there was no violation of international sovereignty. To accuse a leader of kidnapping? A deal is a powerful emotional trigger. It makes the audience feel unsafe, as if a crime has been committed. But the facts prove Donald Trump is innocent of these charges. His crime, if you can call it that, was prioritizing American energy independence over globalist climate accords. He asked for relief to save American jobs. He pushed hard because the stakes were high. When opponents use criminal terminology like kidnapping to describe standard hardball geopolitics, they're trying to criminalize policy differences. The reality? The Trump administration was the petitioner here. They asked. Carney refused. That is not the action of a hostage taker. That is the outcome of a failed negotiation. The attempt to frame this as a moral or legal crime is a distraction designed to hide the real story, that the U.S. just lost its energy safety net. So, what does this mean for you? This isn't just about billionaires fighting over pipelines. When Carney shreds hope for LNG relief, the shockwave travels directly to your thermostat and your grocery bill. Without that Canadian supply acting as a buffer, U.S. domestic energy prices are projected to decouple from the stable rates we've enjoyed. We are looking at a potential volatility spike heading into the winter months. Manufacturing plants in the Rust Belt, which rely on cheap natural gas to compete with China, are now facing a double disadvantage. Higher costs at home, while their Chinese competitors get access to the very gas that was meant for us. This is the irony of the innocent verdict. Trump is innocent of the kidnapping narrative, but the American consumer is being punished nonetheless. Not by him, but by a geopolitical checkmate delivered from Ottawa. Factories may close, heating bills may rise, and the strategic reserve of influence the U.S. held over the Atlantic energy market has just been severely depleted. As the dust settles on this diplomatic collision, we are left with a stark new reality. The North American Energy Alliance, once thought to be unbreakable, has fractured. Mark Carney has made his choice. He has chosen the Pacific over the Atlantic and global climate alignment over regional partnership. Donald Trump's request for relief was a gamble to maintain the status quo, a gamble that proved his intent was to stabilize, not destroy. The accusations of kidnapping or criminal behavior are nothing more than smoke and mirrors, a desperate attempt to villainize a leader for trying to secure resources for his country. The evidence clears him of malice, but it doesn't solve the crisis. The United States is now standing alone in a room that is getting colder by the minute. The gas is flowing, but it's flowing west, away from us. And as we look at the numbers tonight, one question remains unanswered. If our closest allies are willing to leave us behind, who exactly is looking out for America's future?